Hi, everybody. Thank you to Matt for all of the thank yous that he shared, which I will reiterate. What a wonderful experience this has been so far to be here at Jentel and to be able to share this work with people who I've gotten to know and really respect, and also the community locally, which is a privilege. So we can go ahead and go to the first slide. So this is a kind of a shortened version of my artist statement. I just want to give you some context about who I am, what I'm interested in, and why I feel compelled to make the things that I do. So the first important thing is that I'm an interdisciplinary artist. For me, that means that my practice is led by ideas or questions that I have. It's not so much led by a medium. So I started out as a painter, but quickly realized the things I was thinking about didn't make sense in paintings. And so I started leaning into pretty much everything else. But right now, I'm really, really specifically engaged in ceramics, which I'll get into later. The other important thing I wanted to share is that I'm originally from Mexico City. And the lens through which I see the world is kind of fundamentally influenced by displacement and having moved around, or by choice or not by choice, many, many times in my life. I mean, I think at this point I've lived in like 10 or 11 different places, around the world and around our country. So that's kind of something I think about a lot. As I mentioned, I work in sculpture, but I also work in painting, photography. I'm dabbling in some video work right now. And all that work truly is kind of a search for the feeling of home or belonging. And for me, that has fundamentally manifested, as you see in my artist picture, is through this connection with the natural world and with place. So the other aspect of this is that I'm really curious, both through kind of personal genealogy, but also just conceptually about what it means to be indigenous to a place, how we can be native to a place, even if we're not from there, right? And I think about this a lot in a country of immigrants, in a country where populations have been moved and people often move for jobs and things like that. It feels hopeless sometimes if you're not from somewhere. And so I think, well, how can you make yourself feel like you're from somewhere, right? We can go ahead. So for me, I think about place as multiple things. I use that word a lot. Place is memory, place is self, and also place is material. So place is memory and self being material. And this is a picture actually of my paternal grandmother's ranch that she grew up on in central Mexico. It's a place that I return to a lot. And the practice really is about kind of visiting places, revisiting places that have meaning for me, interacting with the natural environment, understanding it, and the unique things that it kind of communicates through its visual and material kind of aspects, the unique things about it. And then also now, we can go ahead and go to the next slide. Actually, I'll talk about the material in a second. So what I was going to say is that I took those places, essentially I started out by taking source imagery at first. I was just taking photography of places that were meaningful to me and translating it into what I tended to call these like memory maps, visual memory maps, that were paintings that essentially communicated connection to a certain place, but also I tried to depict the way that I experience memory in my mind. So often it was 4 or 5 photographs that had been like layered in this somewhat, nonsensical or abstracted way to show the way that I remember a place, right? We often tend to think that we think in perfect snapshots when it comes to memory, but actually it's usually multiple things going on at once. And so I was trying to capture it in painting and then started to get frustrated by that, which is what led me to thinking about what is a more kind of a richer for me or more meaningful way to incorporate these places into my work. And that's what has led me to using site-specific material and what led me to working in sculpture and specifically in ceramics. So this is a picture of the Brazos River, which is the river that I grew up next to my entire childhood in Texas. Almost never interacted with it. But it also flows very close to Fort Worth, where I now live with my family. And I decided to go to the river and see if I could harvest clay from there, see if I could harvest any other natural materials. And so this was my first time actually harvesting wild clay to work with in my practice. So I start to take these materials. That's one piece of the puzzle. The second piece for me was reconnecting in meaningful ways with this heritage that maybe I felt that I had lost or was a little bit separated from in my Mexican background. And so I started to research and really embrace the use of traditional and very ancient techniques of pottery making and pottery firing. And so this is a pit fire, which is often called a primitive fire if you're in the community, which I think is like a really interesting word to choose, right? Because for me, human beings have been complex forever, and there's nothing really like primitive about it in a way, right? Or maybe it's an opportunity to redefine that word for myself. But so just wanted to show that, and also kind of how the pit fire truly looks almost like an archaeological dig when it's finished. You know, you're like kind of unearthing these things in the ashes. Often I'll try to incorporate meaningful material in terms of like the wood that I'm using to burn, but also, you know, in the finishes on my pottery. These are some images of the wild clay. I actually spent some time in Crete, in Greece, last summer at a different residency where I also harvested wild clay. A lot of my work ends up actually being connected to the natural world. So I sculpt a lot of fruits or natural objects, I guess. This is a pomegranate made from the Brazos Valley wild clay that I harvested in that previous picture. And this is the process of, you know, you have to filter and then dry out the clay before you can use it. So it's a very kind of meditative, time-consuming way of having your hands in that dirt, having your hands in that place and really feeling it, you know. Okay, we can. So now I just want to show you some examples of the different ways that this clay then manifests into objects that I make that I think of as little ways of connecting to these places. These are called my milagros. That means miracles in Spanish, and they refer to kind of an ex voto practice in many Mexican cathedrals and churches where you bring bodies or parts of bodies and you offer them up to a deity or a saint as part of a vow or a promise or a prayer. I started kind of meditatively, repetitively making these out of site-specific clays, site-specific glazes, almost as little prayers, thinking about gender, self-determination, reproductive rights, and, you know, femininity, in my case, and motherhood as well. This is another body of work. These are called my vegetal virgins, and again, I'm pulling from the Catholic kind of, you know, combining this hybridity, this unique hybridity of Mexican identity with the Spanish Catholic culture and then this indigenous work. And so these are evoking, you know, the Virgin Mary in her shroud, but then I have traditional indigenous forms in these little babies, or they're called chaneques. They're actually the spirit of the wild in Maya culture. And then I incorporate living plants, which are succulents, which actually reproduce on their own. And if you're not familiar with the two large plants on either side, that's called the mother of millions. And not only can you take every leaf and create a new plant, you know, propagate a new plant, but they actually grow their babies on the plant, on the leaves. So you'll get like millions of babies, and then the babies fall off and they start to grow wherever they are. So I thought this was a really potent symbol for motherhood, feminism, you know, self-determination and empowerment. And again, pit firing, working with site-specific clays, etc. And then this is one of the most recent kind of bodies of work. I made this all when I was in Greece last summer. And they were kind of the precursor to the work I'm doing now here at Jentel. Thinking about fruits as vessels, often feminine or feminist vessels with this potential for fertility and giving life. They're beautiful, but they're also pulling from these kind of pre-Columbian or Mesoamerican traditions with the tripod pots, evoking kind of domestic pots that you would use in a kitchen, but also saying, hey, you know, I'm utterly useless, and I choose to, just be myself for the sake of being myself, not necessarily to make you salsa. And then quickly, just the last, this is where I'm at and kind of what I'm working on here in Jentel. These are my tripod vessels. I see them as these feminist vessels that, you know, talk about all these themes I've discussed. And this piece here on the left, the left, actually has one of the first glazes I ever made by myself, like using site-specific materials, which is very exciting for me. Anyway, thank you very much. Yeah. Yeah.
What was the source of the yellow clay in one of the figures?
Oh, yeah, thank you for asking. I have a good story for that. So about 20 years ago, I did a research project in ancient Corinth when I thought I was going to be an archaeologist, an art historian. And we were, every day we would walk by this escarpment that had this beautiful yellow kind of colored substance, right? And one of my professors said to me, hey, you know, that is actually Corinthian clay. And he said, it's the clay that the tiles on all of the modern houses are made of, but it's also the clay that anytime you see this yellow color, you know it's ancient Corinth clay in like ancient pots, right? And I thought, whoa, like mind blown. A substance that transcends and connects time somehow, time and place at the same time, right? So then last summer I went to Crete, and it turns out there was like a very similarly colored clay there. And so actually those bodies that you saw that were like yellow and red, those were the two types of clay I found in Crete, actually in the same place. It was remarkable. It was beautiful though, and it was a little hard to work with. I had to mess with it a little bit, but yeah, thanks for asking. Yeah, it is, yeah.
So since your creative process is so tied to place and experiences of place, without prying too much,
No, yeah.
please set the boundaries
Yeah,
that
yeah.
you want. What's your experience been like at Jentel so far?
So amazing, and I'm glad you asked that, because I've been looking for ways to see like what makes this environment unique. What can I take with me? Because that's like one of the joys for me is like, oh, what's around me that kind of reminds people of this place or signifies this place meaningfully. I've been really trying to immerse myself in the history. So I've been learning a lot about the indigenous populations that were either moved here or now live here. I've also been hiking around, and as Lynn knows, picking up all the scoria and all the rocks. And then yesterday I actually discovered kind of some wild clay once, things thawed a little bit. Super interested in the bentonite that exists here. I guess it's one of the largest deposits of it in the country. So I'm, like squirreling away all these things, and I've already made a glaze actually, which I'm calling, haven't decided if it's the permanent name, but my clinker glaze, which actually has Butch's fireplace ash in it, as well as the scoria from the driveway in Jentel. So, and I think, a lot of that is like this collaboration with chance, because I don't know what it's going to look like, right? Like I didn't know that was going to turn out that way, and I love that. So it's been super fruitful.